In this video, we're going to talk about taking Excel data and importing it into Octave. And the first step in doing, and also performing some basic matrix operations, but the first step to doing that is telling Octave where it should point to locate files. If I just start typing in some code and telling it to access a file from my computer, it's not going to know where to go. So in your file browser, this is where Octave is going to be looking to access your files. That's not where my file is located. My file is located on my desktop in a folder that I've created called Octave. So wherever you've created your folder and wherever your data is, that's where you want to set your file browser. So I'm going to go in here, I'm going to say set browser directory, and I'm going to locate this from my desktop or wherever your file may be, and I'm going to select Octave, and I'm not going to see the file in here because it's just looking for folders. And then once I'm in the correct folder, there I am. I'm going to select choose, and right away I should see the name of any files that are in that folder. So if I now read in this file, I'm not going to have any problems. Now the function for doing this is called XLSRead, and XLSRead will grab data from that file and we'll store it into a matrix. So the first thing I want to do is create a matrix. I'm going to call this matrix A, or whatever name you want to give it, and I'm going to start typing in the function XLSRead, parenthesis, and now I'm going to give it the file name. Now the file name is capital file1.xlsx. You need to put single quotes around it, so capital file1.xlsx, and then put an end single quote and close the parenthesis. Now, this is very case sensitive and space sensitive, so you have to make sure that the file name you type in here is exactly matching that of the file you're trying to read in. Now, if I press enter, you may or may not get this error. If you do get this error, that means the package that this function comes from is not loaded, and it's called the IO package. If you're not getting this error and you immediately see in your workspace a matrix A created, then skip this step. So if I do not see this package in here, what I need to do is go to the help and select Octave packages, and this will take me to the Octave SourceForge page, which contains packages. So we want to browse the full list of packages. I'll select that, and you're going to see a ton of packages here, of which you will probably not need a whole lot. Now I want the IO package, so I'm going to scroll down, find IO, and I'm going to download this file. Now this file will download as a, give it a second to load, and give it a second to download, and the file that we get out of this is called a tar.gz. I don't know if you can see this down here, but the file that's loaded, I'm going to go ahead and say show in folder, and there it is. That's the file that I want. So I'm going to I want to make sure that I know the name of it, so I'm going to copy that. Actually, I'm going to rename this because I've downloaded it more than once. So I want to remove the one there. You don't have to do that, but it's just going to be more consistent in terms of your install. So we want to rename it. Let's see. All right, so there it is. I'm going to copy that, and I'm now going to go over to the folder in which I have my data stored. So that's the Octave folder on my desktop. I'm going to paste that in there so that now when I go back into Octave, I'll be able to see that that file is in there, and that's where I'm going to say install the package. So what I'm going to type in now is pkg space install, and I'm going to type in the file name, again with single quotes, which is IO, and I can just look over here to make sure I get it right, -2.4.0.tar.gz. Close the single quote. Press enter, and now it's going to probably take a second. You should see a bunch of stuff pop up eventually once this thing is in the loading process, in the install process. And we'll give it a second here and see what happens. And after a minute or so, you'll see that there's an output. Now you're back to your prompt, so now you can start typing again. And now I should be able to repeat that same function. So if I press my up arrow, I don't need to type in the XLSRead function again. And if I press enter, it's again going to tell me that I've got a problem here. It's going to say it's from the IO package, and okay, well that just means that the package is installed, but I need to load it. So you might need to do this each time you open up Octave in order to access that. So pkg load IO. And you don't really see any output after that. Everything's good, no errors at this point. And now I should be able to run the XLSRead function. And there we go. Great. So now it's done its deed, and you see that now it's detected XLS interface A equals, and now it's created this matrix. Now in the original file, if I go back to it, I have some labels in there, and the labels got excluded. So Octave knows to kind of ignore any text in there. So it's basically been able to ignore those labels. Now suppose I wanted to get rid of one of the columns. Suppose I didn't want to import all the data. Well, what I can actually do is I can say, I can access certain rows or certain columns of matrix A. And the way I do that is by saying A parenthesis, and then I can say the column, comma, row. So let's just say I want to access just one value in here. I want to access the first row, first column. So what I would type in is 1, 1, and this is a matrix reference telling it, okay, output the first row, first column of the matrix. And then you'll see that it's just outputting the single value there, 8.5038. Now suppose what I really wanted to see is just the first column. So what I would do is I want to tell Excel that I need all of the rows, but only the first column. And the way you specify all is by a colon. So if I do A colon, comma 1, that says output all the rows, but only column 1. Similarly, if I wanted to access all the columns in row 1, I could say row 1, column, all columns, and that would spit out just the first row. So in doing that, let's just say I wanted to eliminate the first row, the first column altogether. So let's just say I wanted to have columns 2 and 3. So you would be doing this in the event that you have some data that maybe involves some characters or text that you want to omit. So what I'm going to do is you can either overwrite the existing matrix A or you can create a new one. My suggestion is always to create a new one. That way you always have the original data stored in your original matrix. And what I want B to equal is I want B to equal entries from A. And I want it to include all the rows, so I'm going to do a colon, comma, only columns 2 and 3. So the way I could do only columns 2 and 3 is to specify in brackets 2 and 3. Okay, so what I'm basically telling Octave to do, or MATLAB, is basically only produce a vector or a matrix containing columns 2 and 3. I could do the same thing if I wanted B to only, let's say I wanted to omit column 2 and I only wanted columns 1 and 3. Then I can do bracket 1 space 3. And there we go. That only produces back here column 1 and column 3. So that's a way I could draw in data, and I can eliminate things in there that I don't potentially want, but Octave and MATLAB are pretty good about omitting any rows or columns that contain text so that it gets a single format for all the data. So one of the constraints of working with matrices is that a matrix has to contain like data. So if they're all, you'll notice that over here the class is all double, meaning that's a numerical value. So it's only going to import values that are consistent across the board. Okay, so now I can do things to matrix B, like add matrix B to matrix B if I wanted to, and B plus B will just basically take the elements and add them to themselves. I can scale elements. Let's say I want to take 1.03 times B, I can do that. Now, right now I'm not storing the result into any matrix, it's just outputting it on the screen. So if I want to store that data somewhere, I could do C equals 1.03 times B. Now you can't do 1.03b. It's going to throw a syntax error. You actually have to explicitly tell MATLAB or Octave that you want to multiply 1.03 times b. So now you see that there's a matrix C in here, and C is exactly 3%, a 3% increase on top of the original B matrix. So there's B just for reference. You can see the B matrix here is the same as the C matrix here, scaled by 1.03. All right, let's say now I want to create a matrix to be able to perform matrix operations. So depending on how big you want to create a matrix, let's say I want to just start with creating a 2x3 matrix. So there are a couple of ways to go here. If you know what you want the matrix to contain, like let's just say you want to start with a matrix containing all zeros. So what I could do is I'm going to create another matrix. I'm going to call it D equals. And I'm going to use a function called zeros. And zeros basically allows you to specify a matrix size. So you have to specify rows and columns. Let's say I want to create a matrix called D that contains, that's a 2x3 that contains all zeros. So if I do zeros, parenthesis 2, 3, it's going to create D that's a matrix that's a 2x3 matrix containing only zeros. Now, similarly, if I want to create a matrix that contains only ones, I can type in 1s, 2, 3. And so now it creates a 2 by 3 matrix of 1s. Now, there's no such thing as 2s. You can't create a 2 by 3 matrix of 2s because it's not a function. You could either create a matrix of 0s or 1s. So what if I wanted all of these to be 2? Well, that's easy. I can just take D and assign it the value of 2 times D, and now you see that I basically just scaled the ones to make them whatever I want. But let's just say that I actually only wanted to have, I wanted the middle column to contain zeros. So basically what I want is a 2 by 3 matrix that has 2, 2, 2, 2, and then 0, 0 in the middle. So I can manually assign or change values within the D matrix. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, create or overwrite the matrix D, and in it store take the D matrix, and in the entries of all rows, comma, the second column. So now we're telling take D rows 1 and 2 and column 2 and replace it with, and now I can specify what I want the value to be. Let me back up just 1 second here. Rather than to manipulate a whole column at a time, let's just say I want to go into one entry, and I want to make this matrix contain all 2s, except I want this first row, second column to be a 6. All right, so I would say take D and take the first row, second column, and assign it the value of 6. So all that does is it takes the D matrix, and in the first row, second column, it places whatever value assigned to it. Well, this might be a hassle if you have a large matrix, and let's say you want to assign 6 or to all entries in that column. So the problem is easily solved by saying, okay, in all of the rows, but at the second column of D, assign the value of 6. And that works just perfectly. So all it's done is it's taken all the rows, second column, and put a 6 in there. Well, let's look at this on a larger scale. Let's say D was a matrix of 1s that ended up being, I don't know, 10 by 10 or 10 by 7, just to make the dimensions different. Okay, so I have a 10 by 7 matrix of 1s, and again, let's just suppose that I want to make the 1, 2, 3, the fourth column, I want to make all those values equal to 2. So what I would do is I would say take D, all rows of matrix D, and in the fourth column place a 6 or 2, whatever I just said. And so it does that automatically. Similarly, if I wanted to say, oh, well, I actually want the second to last row to also be all 2s, then I could say take the, let's see, that would be the 9th column, or the 9th row, excuse me, all columns. So I want to basically take this row, including all of the 7 columns, and I want to assign it a value of 2. Easy peasy. So that takes care of that process as well. If you want to basically make all of these different, then you can tell Octave or MATLAB, let's say, for example, I want to just make the first 2 elements here into zeros. And I don't want to apply it to the whole row, and maybe I don't want to work element by element to reassign them. So what I can actually do here is say, okay, well, I want to take the second row, but I only want to take columns 1 and 2. The way I would tell it to only take columns 1 and 2 is to put in a bracket, put in 1, 2, close the bracket, and now I have to basically give it a vector to replace columns 1 and 2 with. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to say, all right, in those entries, bracket, put 0 and comma another 0. Now that's a row, so if you remember, to replace elements of a row, you have to put commas between them, and now when I press enter, you should see those turn into zeros. Well, what if I wanted to do that in, let's just say, the 6th row and the 9th and 6th column and the 9th and 10th rows? So what I would say is take D, take the rows 9 and 10, brackets, comma, and do this to the 6th column, close parenthesis, equals, and now I'm going to tell it to put in a 0 and a 0. And I close that bracket, and now you'll see that has changed. So this is just some basic operations in Octave.